regarded to obviously Gen Inspire, which is the inspiration and motivational side of Gen Hope. It gives me great pleasure, I'm saying great pleasure, to be interviewing Dr. John Andrews. And obviously I met John Andrews when he came to speak at church, and I was just blown away by his message. And I ran out straight away and bought this book, obviously Moving Beyond Mediocrity. And what we're going to be doing today is breaking down the 10 steps that John Andrews feels that you need to do to be able to get past mediocrity and begin living your purpose. So enjoy. We know you're going to be blessed. All right, obviously, Dr. Andrews, we'll call you, we'll be professional. Thank you so much for doing this, because I believe truly that people will be blessed following this interview. But if we start off, obviously we're going to be talking about your book and obviously how you broke down segments of this book. But if you give some people a little introduction into yourself so they know your background, who you are and what you're about.
Sure, no problem.
Your credibility.
Yeah. As you can probably guess from the accent, born in Belfast, Northern Ireland. Child of the Troubles, in a sense, grew up during the Troubles. Became a Christian at 8. I had the privilege of having Christian parents, and as a result of that was introduced into the life of the church very young, so was very familiar with the world of the church, if you like. Filled with the Spirit at 12, baptized in water at 12.
Wow.
Felt the sense of call of God in my life in my mid-teens. Ended up in Bible college at 17. Started pioneering First Church in a little village between Wakefield and Barnsley at the age of 20. Got married at 21 to Dawn, the love of my life. Met her at Bible college. She's an amazing woman. We have 3 children together, Elena, Simeon and Beth Ann. And from there, spent about 9.5 years in that village context. From there, went to a town called Rotherham, where we repurposed the church. We spent there 15 years. And then now have been Senior Associate Leader at Renewal Christian Centre since September 2012.
Fantastic.
I'm absolutely loving it. So I've been in Christian ministry full time for about 25 years.
And the great thing is, I was looking obviously at your background when I read your book. Obviously you've got a master's, you've got a doctorate. Are you a natural academic as well?
No.
Are you not?
No.
It's just a lot
No,
of
I'm really not. No. I know my strengths. And I work to them. I've met people who are genuinely, seriously clever. And I'm not like that, but I don't pretend to be something I'm not. So I just work my strengths. I work really hard. I've got a really good memory, a very strong work ethic, and a great engine.
Fantastic.
So I just max it out.
Excellent.
And I think I've achieved things in academia that probably school teachers in my secondary school probably thought I would achieve.
Excellent. Well, I think that's, it's obviously profound, because obviously we were talking about the reason why we brought you here is to talk about your book, obviously Moving Beyond Mediocrity. Now, one of the reasons obviously why I wanted to do this, I remember hearing you talk and you broke things down in such a simplistic way that I wanted to buy your book. I don't get that urge a lot, but I wanted to read your book. But when I looked at the book, one of the questions that I had, and I wanted people to, probably a question I think people watching this would have, what made you write this book above Moving Beyond Mediocrity? What compelled you to write the book?
Well, I mean, as I said, I've been a follower of Jesus for a long time. So I became a little bit irritated by a philosophy that said you could have 3 easy steps to success. I always get a wee bit suspicious about that. If it was that easy, everybody would be successful.
Definitely.
So I do get a bit nervous about that. And then studying the Bible all my adult life, you're recognizing that there's processes involved. There's no shortcuts to anything. That actually, in order to get to the podium of life, if you like, you've got to go through a process. So I wanted to engage in stuff that was honest process stuff that anybody could access and understand, that it wasn't for the domain of the super Christian. It wasn't for just the elite, but actually it was for everybody. And so I wanted to tease out some life principles that were biblically rooted, that would help someone like me move to the next level of life, whatever that means. So my next level will be different to somebody else's next level. But the principles of moving to a next level are sort of the same.
So they're transferable no matter what you're looking to do.
I think that's correct.
And obviously there's 10 key points that we're going to talk about today. How did you come to those? Because obviously, as you rightly said, some people will say that the magic answer to success is this, or the top 3. But also you came with 10. How did you come to the 10? Before we start getting into those, how did you get to the 10?
Absolutely. Well, I think obviously there's a sense in which you look at the Bible and you see some reoccurring themes.
Yeah.
So you see people having to press through fear, having to overcome doubt, having to deal with situations that are completely outside of their upbringing, background, logic. So what I noticed was there was essentially reoccurring themes taking place in the life of David, in the life of Mary, in the life of Joseph.
Yeah.
Once you strip away the individuality and uniqueness of their story, you were actually seeing repeat patterns occur. And it was those repeat patterns that I really picked up on. So it wasn't there was a magic 10, or there's 7 or there's 15. I think obviously you could probably find more, or you could probably settle for less. But I saw 10 reoccurring themes that I felt were worthy of a bit of attention.
Excellent, excellent. Now, before we get into obviously those 10 themes, there was something that you put at the beginning, right at the beginning of the book, which I just loved. I absolutely loved. And if I read it out to you, you can tell me where the inspiration came from, because it's just genius, I think. It reads, many want to achieve a standard of excellence cheaply and easily. They want glory without pain, recognition without rejection, prosperity without generosity, and success with as few shakes as possible. However, someone once said, there are no shortcuts to anywhere that's worth going. I look. That was almost like you'd set the book. The difficulty is you set the book at that standard. Then I hope it doesn't drop after this point. But I love that. Yeah. Where did you get that from?
Well, I think the inspiration and it comes from the fact that knowing human nature, as people, we're often trying to find the path of least resistance. Yeah. So the danger is we say, what's the quickest route to my success? Yeah. What will get me to where I need to go with as least pain as possible? Yeah. And what I was discovering by looking at these biblical characters, and even at my own level, looking at my own life, was actually there are no shortcuts. So I remember hearing a country and western star. It was actually Billy Ray Cyrus, and he had a weird hit called "Achy Breaky Heart."
Okay, I know. So yes, I know it.
Yes, indelibly seared on my consciousness. Yes. And he was being interviewed afterwards, and somebody said, "Wow, you're sort of an overnight success." Yeah. And he said, "Yeah, it's taken me 20 years to be an overnight success." And it suddenly, that hits me. Yeah. I think when you examine people who've been successful in business, sport, music, and in areas of spirituality and Christianity, it hasn't happened in 5 minutes. I think it takes a process. And we are in danger often of looking at where a person has arrived in success and not where they have come from. And I think that's the key to understanding the book. Because
even this thing about, isn't it a big contradiction to how everything is now? Because we have YouTube and we have all these things. Yeah. Everyone's talking about you can be an overnight success. You can put a video. You don't no longer have to. If you're a pop artist, you don't have to go from site to site now and go to pub crawl. Trying to get your music out there. Just put it on YouTube and you can be an instant success.
Absolutely.
But what you're saying is that if you really want success, regardless what the media's trying to portray to young people, there is a journey.
Oh, there absolutely. In fact, I refer to the mentality you've just talked about as X-factorism.
X-factorism, I like that.
So young people, any person who stands on the X at the audition and hopes to shortcut the process. Yeah. So they want a Simon Cowell, they want an expert to see how brilliant they are at 16 and somehow cut out the process of getting to that success. Right. I think we're breeding that into a generation that says you can have everything you want at minimum cost and minimum pain. Yeah. The reality is, of course, though we're selling that dream, once people get beyond the veneer of the dream, they discover it's down to really hard work. Right. It's down to consistency, persistence, perseverance. It's down to all the non-sexy stuff of just getting up every morning and doing the job every single day. And I've often said this, that extraordinary is just ordinary done really, really well a lot. Yeah. So if I get up every day and do the ordinary stuff really well consistently, I think I'll end up producing something that's extraordinary without necessarily having extraordinary talent. So the vast majority of us don't have the sort of extraordinary genius of 1 or 2 or 3% of the population. Most of us are quite sort of middle of the road type people.
Yeah.
How can ordinary people who view themselves as ordinary live extraordinary lives? And it's down to doing the simple things really well, consistently, that helps us get ultimately to our goal.
Excellent. That leads us on to obviously the great things into these 10 chapters now. How an everyday person who doesn't have an extraordinary I can't even say the word, extraordinary gift is able to still live above that level of mediocrity. So if we start with chapter 1, and the title is Unnerved by the Unknown. Yeah. Now, every chapter I pulled something out that I wanted to start with, and one of the things that you say is, one of the quotes in there is, one of the things that stops us from breaking through is the fact that we become unnerved by the unknown. So you started off with this chapter. Why did you start off with the unnerved by the unknown?
I think for most people it is the most common issue. Yeah. It's the unknown that often stops people from doing stuff. Yeah. So one of the illustrations used in the book is Chuck Yeager breaking the speed of sound in 1947. Theoretically, we knew that human beings could fly that fast without disintegrating. But because no one had ever done it, every time they got close to it, and instrumentation went off the scale and the plane shook, and the temptation was pull back, because we don't know what's beyond there. Yeager, of course, on that incredible day broke through and reached Mach 1 for the very first time in human history. And he said in his autobiography, the other side of Mach 1, it was as smooth as a baby's bottom. Yeah. But between the smooth and the wild was the unknown. Right. And that's the bit where most people stop. So lots of people would love to explore, but they're a bit afraid what they'll find. It's like the person who walks into the Chinese restaurant and always orders the same thing. Or orders chips. Why have chips in a Chinese restaurant when it's a Chinese restaurant? But what they're doing is they're staying safe. Yeah. They're not venturing into the unknown in something as simple as their culinary tastes. Well, if you ratchet that up, that's where most people live. They would love to go to Australia, but what if they don't like it? They would love to fly on a plane, but what if they panic? They would love to try a new venture, but what if it doesn't work? So it's often the unknown that stops people moving forward.
And do you find, obviously, because when you started with this and you had people in mind who would read your book, relating and saying, I can relate to that, because I know who I want to be, I know what my potential is. Because one of the things that you said is moving from your potential to actually doing it. Yeah. So many people are born with potential. And if someone who's watching this video will say, I've got the potential to be the very best. Yeah. But how do I move from the potential to actually being that person? I've got to face the unknown. Yeah. So what recommendations would you give? Is someone who's battling with that fear of whether that be the fear of the unknown or what will happen? What advice would you give to someone to say how you move from point 1 to B, dealing with that aspect? Yeah,
I think for me one of the greatest words of advice I can give you is speak to people who've explored the unknown. So those who have literally pushed through the sound barrier of life, those who have ventured where other people said they should never go, they're the sort of people to talk to, because they're able to say to you, I've been to the other side, and actually you can do it, you can achieve it. They're the sort of people you can talk to. So, if I've ever travelled, I've been to over 35 countries in the world, and if I'm going to a new country and I know a friend who's been there, I won't just Google it. I'll call them and I'll say, what should I expect? What's the food like? What's the weather like? Is there any culturally weird stuff that I need to be geared up for? Is there anything I need to watch out for? So what you're doing is you're talking to someone who has been there before.
That makes sense.
And of course, as a Christian, as a follower of Christ, the ultimate person who's been there before is God himself. Yeah. So God is always calling us to somewhere we haven't been, but he already is.
Knows. Yeah. Because you've got a great saying here, and it says, faith does not ignore the facts, it faces them. Yeah. Faith doesn't run from the price. He knows exactly how much it costs, but still decides to pay. Yeah. So I think the great thing what you're saying is that if you can prepare and say, speak to someone who's done the unknown that you're looking to do, they can tell you what it consists of. Then you have to ask the question, am I prepared to pay the price? Yeah. So I thought that was a great saying in that. But I think to know obviously what the price is, as you're rightly saying, you have to find someone who's been there before. Yeah. Which is, in the day of technology now, we can do that fairly easily. Of
course we can.
So we need to. So give us an example how you did that in terms of your. So obviously I know you talked about the travel, but whether that be obviously because you've gone from point A, being a director of a training school. How did you do that? Because that must have been scary, being a director of a training school.
Oh yeah, it was, because you were stepping into a realm that was completely different to everything you'd done before. Yeah. It was literally, we were creating a new job. In a new environment. I was still leading the church while taking on this new post. So you were having to learn new skills really quickly. You were having to develop teams really quickly. Yeah. And again, for me, it's a couple of things. It's a sense of confidence in your ability. Yeah. So when you're doing something that you really do have the gift for, even though it might be a stretch for you, and you know that the direction you're going in is the right one, even though it may be slightly unnerving. I think all of that produces a confidence then to have a go at the new things and the new stuff. But to weigh up that cost is really, really important. So, like an example would be when I did my PhD. My oldest daughter was then 6. My son was 2. A young family, leading the church, doing a lot of other stuff, and people saying there's no way you can do all of that. But I sat down with people who had done it, and I said, is this doable? And they gave me an idea of how much it would cost, literally, physically, but how much it would cost emotionally. Fantastic. And then my wife and I sat down and literally asked ourselves the question, are we prepared to pay that price for the next 4 years? Fantastic. And so I set a target that I would have a doctorate by the time my oldest daughter was 10. Yeah. And in the midst of that, we had a third baby as well.
As you do. We're
not busy enough. Let's throw another baby in. So yeah, absolutely.
No, excellent. And I think for anyone, just to close off on this chapter, for anyone who's looking to that first step, is saying find somebody who's done it, who's been there before, who's had success in that area, learn from them, ask them the question, what does it take? Absolutely. Then ask the question, are you prepared to pay that price? Now you know that the unknown is not so much now the unknown. Yeah. The question now is, are you prepared to pay the price to get there?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, so we can go to chapter 2, which is obviously one that I think everybody will be able to appreciate. It's obviously the title is No Gain Without Pain. Yeah. And I love, once again, you started off and it reads this, a quote that you put in here. Do not pray for an easy life. Pray to be stronger men. Do not pray for tasks equals to your power. Pray for powers equal to your tasks. Yeah. Okay, so give me the background to this one. Obviously, a lot of people are not prepared to pay the price, as we talked about in that very poetic start of the book. But do you think this is another major problem out there? People are not prepared to pay the price, and everybody wants to live at that comfort zone.
Yeah, I think certainly. I think it's coming to the recognition that whatever you're going to do in life, in whatever field, it's settling this truth once and for all. Yeah. The journey will involve some level of pain.
It is coming.
It is. Now, if you are not expecting it, or you don't believe that, then pain is a genuine shock. Yeah. So then it's a shock to the system. So often soldiers are trained that to expect things to go wrong. So we have a perfect battle plan. Yeah. But the minute the plan goes live, something's going to go wrong. And if they're trained to expect something to go wrong, they can handle the curveball, as the Americans would say, much easier. In my years of Christian ministry, the greatest challenge has been helping people to manage the pain that they genuinely did not expect to come their way. Yeah. When they stepped out to do something for God, or to help somebody, or to bless somebody, or to do something amazing. Yeah. So we all want to believe we'll set off on a journey and it's going to be plain sailing. Yeah. The truth is, most people know this truth. Yeah. They know deep down you rarely get to the end of the journey without a storm or two. Yeah. You rarely get to achieve anything without the occasional bruise or kick in the shins or dislocated expectation. Something that came your way you genuinely did not expect. I think if people settle that at the beginning of their journey, then pain will come their way, not that we're pessimistic, but it's going to come, then I think we prepare for it much better and sharpen our thinking on it.
Because in the book you talk about there's two types of pain. There's one that's around us, and one that's in us. Break that down. So there's the pain that's around us and that's in us that we have to be prepared to face, and it is coming our way.
Absolutely.
What kind of things?
Well, I think the pain around us is the stuff of life. So, biblical example that might help. Joseph says to his brothers, I have a dream. And they go, yeah, right. Smack. And the next thing that happens is the boys in the ground, they're threatening to kill him, and then he's sold as a slave. Now that's pain around you. That's just totally unexpected stuff. Someone reacts in a bad way, you make an investment and it goes south. You serve somebody and they react badly. You step out an adventure and it fails. That stuff that happens around you, some of that you've got control over, and some of that you really don't have control over because it's about the reactions of other people. That's a level of pain you have to manage. But then there's pain that's within you. So let's go back to Joseph. Joseph gets hurt by his brothers. Now that's an outside pain. But if Joseph doesn't deal with that, that hurt becomes an inside pain. And the inside pain can be as debilitating. So if I don't deal with unforgiveness, if I don't deal with bitterness, if I don't deal with insecurity, if I don't deal with inadequacy, that becomes as bruising to me on the inside as someone slapping me in the face on the outside. And lots of people, even if nothing's going bad around them, lots of people struggle to cope with some of the pain that's inside.
Well, so obviously you talk about the two types of pain, that inward and obviously those around us. How would you overcome that? So if someone's going through those pains, okay, or even if they're not going through it and you're preparing them, so what we're trying to do in this book is prepare people that, you know, to get to that level where you want to be prepared, as you said about those soldiers. And when it comes, this is how you deal with it. Because there was you made 3 points. One was focus on the right stuff, speak the right words, and do the right thing. So elaborate on those 3 points and how to deal with pain.
Absolutely. Within that, there's essentially 3 elements: vision, values, actions.
Vision, value, actions. Okay.
So if we have a clear vision of where we want to go and what we want to achieve, that can help us put pain in a proper context. If we don't have a vision that drives our lives, then pain, even relatively small pain, becomes big. So my daughter once hurt her finger and she was crying, it was bleeding, and we bandaged it up, and then she went out to play and she completely forgot about her finger. And when she came in, I said to her, "How's your finger?" And she went, "Oh, it's really bad." Now, the fact was, when she was playing with her friends, a bigger vision, she forgot about the pain. When I reminded her of the pain, it dominated everything. I think a lot of people are like that. If we allow the pain to dominate the vision, it gets lost. We get lost. Values is the second thing. So speak the right words comes out of, it's a confession that comes out of belief. So the values that we have within us are challenged by pain. So something happens to me, or something happens around me, or something happens in me. What am I going to do with that? So at that point, if I respond to the pain purely emotionally, then the chances are I'm going to be pushed around. If I respond to the pain according to the belief systems I have, then belief systems transcend pain. They're bigger than pain. They're stronger than pain. They don't change. Pain's something that comes and goes, but my belief system remains the same. And then, sort of out of that, the right actions. So some things, there are some days, forgive this language, so there are some days you just got to, in a bloody minded way, you just got to do the right thing. So there are days you don't feel like being generous. You're just going to be generous because it's the right thing. There are days when you don't feel like getting up and going to work. But it's the right thing to do. So there are moments when my actions are the greatest defiance to my pain. My pain says, give up, stay in bed, pull the duvet over your head, have another drink.
Yeah.
Whereas my actions say, my belief system says, my vision says, no, don't give in to that. Push on to the next level, even when you're processing the pain.
Fantastic.
And sometimes you have to do that while in pain.
Yeah.
And sometimes we overcome the pain and it goes away and we can carry on. But most times in my life, I've had to carry on while processing the pain. And that's the biggest challenge.
Fantastic. But it is a combination of all three, isn't it?
There's I think so.
Doing all three together.
Yeah.
But I think the great thing, as we close off on this section, that I love, is that you're saying to people, it is coming.
Yes.
I don't care if you're a Christian, non-Christian.
It's coming.
Pain's coming.
Yeah.
But if you know how you're going to deal with it,
absolutely,
you don't have to fear it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, if we go into chapter 3, we talk about, obviously, pain. We now go into the fear factor, which is, you mentioned. Now, once again, every time you start, there's something that I just love. And this one was probably one of my favourite bits. It says here, fear is the dark room where Satan develops your negatives.
Yeah.
I was just like, wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Explain that. That verse in itself, fear is the dark room where Satan develops your negatives.
Yeah. I think it comes out of the understanding that what I've discovered about fear is it does a number of crucial things. It generally isolates me.
Yeah.
So when I'm afraid, it tends to drive me away from the sorts of things or the sorts of people that help me.
Yeah.
So it isolates me. I've also found that fear paralyzes me. It almost freezes me to the spot. And also, here's the worst thing I've discovered about fear. It brings out the worst side of me.
Yeah. Explain.
Well, if for example, you've got any insecurities, if you're not sure about yourself, what fear does is magnify the insecurity.
Right. Oh, okay.
So like when everything's going great, you're sort of managing your insecurity. It's okay, you're cool with it all because the sun's shining, the car's in fifth gear going down the motorway and everything's fine.
Yeah.
It's when you hit the wall or something goes bad or you're faced with a fearful prospect, suddenly anything that's loose inside me, anything that's not locked down, gets challenged. It gets pushed around. It gets magnified.
Yeah.
So in my experiences, when I've become afraid, it has magnified my insecurity. It's magnified my sense of weakness.
Yeah.
It's exposed even any character flaws within me. It's almost like it's put a big magnifying glass on it and gone, boom, it's blasted it out. And then that adds to the further sense of paralysis and weakness. Yeah. It literally roots me to the spot.
It's another reason not to do what it is that you need to do. You think?
Yeah, exactly.
Because the thing is, you talk about 3 types of fear, and I've never seen anyone break it down into 3. But you fear the past, fear the present, and fear the future. Now you did it in a brilliant way. You summed it up with, for anyone watching football, Stuart Pearce's penalty scenario. Yeah. If you just describe that and how obviously you got the revelation that fear. There's 3 different types. It's not just fear overall. Yeah. It is your past, your present, and the future. Yeah. But just describe, because I thought that was a brilliant way how you came to that.
I love football.
Yeah.
I was so touched by Stuart Pearce's moment in the European Championships in 1996. Wow, a long time ago now. Where England were hot favourites, played Spain in the quarterfinals. Yeah. It was 0-0 after full time, penalty shootout. And there's a moment where Stuart Pearce steps up to the penalty spot. Yeah. Now at that moment, there's a whole world of terror going on. Yeah. He's already missed the penalty at the World Cup semi-final against the arch rivals Germany, and now he's stepping up in the quarterfinals of the European Championship now on home soil to take a penalty. So at that moment, I was so amazed. I was watching it, mesmerised, and then of course he scored. Yeah. And what came out was this explosion. If you've ever seen the footage, the veins are sticking out. He's screaming. The language is unrepeatable. Yes. And he's sort of screaming at the crowd. Yeah. And because what's been released at that moment is he's just put the past to death. Yeah. By doing something in the present that now releases his future. So awesome. In the past, he's known as the guy who missed the penalty in the semi-final of the World Cup. Now this action breaks the past because he's done something today
Yeah.
that literally has overcome the fear of the past.
Yeah.
That he's not only stepped up to take a penalty, but he's scored. Now, because he's scored, it's released him to enjoy a new future. Because he's broken the fear.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he went through when he walked up to that penalty spot, but I just have to imagine his heart must have been bouncing out of his chest.
The whole world watching.
His mouth was dry.
Yeah.
Imagine the prospect. What if I miss this penalty again?
Yeah.
He'll be forever known as the man who choked twice for England. The fact is, he had the courage to shoot and score.
Yeah.
It demolished the past, so it broke the fear of the past, because he overcome the fear of the present, which then actually released him to a brand new future. And I think that's where fear lurks. It lurks in things we've done, which hamper things we do, which stop us from things we might do.
So one of the words that you used is courage, because because people say, okay, I love the analogy, brilliant. What do I need to do then?
Yeah.
And the word that you use, courage. At some point, you're going to have courage to overcome whatever it is that you failed in the past, to deal with the present, so you can do what you need to do, which will then take away any fears of the future. So would you say that's the word that...
Yeah, I would. And obviously, courage is not the absence of fear.
Yeah.
Courage is
the absence
is when you don't want to go into battle, but you do. Courage is when you're told you have cancer, but you don't give up living.
Yeah.
Courage is when you know that actually you've no chance of getting this job, but you apply anyway.
Yeah.
Because you're willing to face the fear. And the Bible shows us people who don't ignore fear.
Yeah.
They face fear. So courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the presence of fear, but you still do the right thing anyway. That's courage. And there are people demonstrating multiple levels of courage every single day. They'll never get a medal for it. They'll never get an award for it. They'll never be on a television program.
Yeah.
But every day they're facing facts that want to keep them small, and every day they're making decisions to press on.
Yeah.
That's courage. And courage ultimately is the key to destroying fear.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, so going into chapter 4, and obviously which is titled Crossing the Line. And also, once again, we'll start off with one of the quotes that I liked. It says, greatness will cost.
Yes.
If we settle for smallness and mediocrity, it will cost us virtually nothing. Although in the end, such actions will be extremely expensive. Yeah. So where did the thought behind crossing the line? What was the motives behind writing this, and obviously starting off with such a great quote?
Well, again, I think it's the link between success and cost.
Yeah.
Anything that's worth anything is expensive. It costs. The reason not everyone's driving a Mercedes is because not everyone can afford one. So it's there's a cost that comes with certain prestige and certain position.
Yeah.
And again, the whole idea that if you are going to achieve anything, there is a cost factor to it. Yeah. So it's naive to think that I can achieve anything from a good marriage through to a great business without this costing me in some way. So, and again, for me, there's tremendous sporting analogy in it. We've just had the Olympics where everyone loves the idea of standing on the gold medal podium.
Yeah.
But what they ignore is, in some cases, 16 years of training.
Yeah.
Sometimes 4 years of training, relentless training for that one moment of opportunity.
Yeah.
People miss the cost in the glory of the moment of success.
Yeah.
The church we're sitting in has 1,500 plus members, but 40 years ago when it was started, there was 4 people.
Yeah.
So everyone walks in and goes, wow, this is amazing. But they don't see 40 years of cost that has paid for this moment. Yeah. And I think cause is an undeniable link. You can't have a great cause without it costing you something.
Yeah. Well, you said a great thing here. You said the freebie culture that so many are familiar with starts with a mentality that hopes we can get something of value on the cheap.
Yeah.
And that's the truth, isn't it?
It is.
We're now the culture We want something for free.
Absolutely.
But I remember T.D. Jakes saying something great. Louis Vuitton never goes on sale.
Yeah.
Bentley never goes on sale. If
Absolutely.
you want it, that's the price that you pay.
Exactly right.
So what you're saying is if you want a great business, if you want a great marriage, you're gonna have to pay the price.
Yeah.
No matter what, because it doesn't come cheap.
True.
But there's a great thing that you said. There was 3 points, and I'd like you to break them down. It says before making a decision that's what you really want to go for, whatever it may be, marriage, business, your Christian life. It says number 1, it says, is it worth working for?
Yeah.
Number 2, you say, is it worth fighting for? And number 3, is it worth waiting for? Which I thought was really profound.
Yeah.
So break down those 3, because I think that's really important, those 3 segments.
Yeah.
In terms of crossing the line.
Absolutely. I think in the context of the book, we look at an amazing story, Jacob falling in love with Rachel, and it's all fantastic, and some beautiful expressions within that. Probably one of the most romantic statements within the Bible, where it says that the years he spent working for her went like a few days.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible, culturally difficult story for us, where he works 7 years for a woman.
Yeah.
And then on the night of his wedding, the women get switched, and he ends up marrying Rachel's sister Leah.
Yeah.
And then he says, you've tricked me, and her dad says, well, work another 7 years. So he works 14 years for this woman.
Yeah.
Equate that to 14 years average salary of 24k a year. That gives you a bit of an idea of monetary value that he places on this. For me, what was amazing was he valued Rachel so much in terms of his love for her that he's prepared to work 14 years to have her.
Yeah.
He's prepared to fight for her even in the midst of disappointment. So when he wakes up with Leah, he could have easily sort of, thrown the towel in or grabbed her and run. Yeah. But he stays within the boundaries of the culture, and he says, okay, I still want her. I will work for her.
I'm going to fight,
and so he fights for her. And just the whole idea that he's prepared to pay this price, personal. I am disturbed at a culture that wants really expensive living, cheap. So as a pastor, I've sat with many couples who want great marriages, but aren't prepared to make the sort of sacrifices. Lots of people who want to be debt free, but still want to have Sky TV, 4 holidays a year, a BMW, and a Rolex watch. Well, we've got to make some choices here. So it's the correlation between what you want, where you are, and how you're going to get there.
Fantastic.
Now, to join those 2 things together, you're going to have to write some checks. You're going to have to actually make some sacrifices. You're going to have to sacrifice something you love for something you really love more.
Say that bit again. I think that's really...
You're going to have to sacrifice something you love for something you really love more. So let me give you an example. If I want a new iPad, iPad 3, but I can't quite afford it, but I know that by cutting out my Sky subscription for a year is going to let me get the iPad 3. I'm letting go of something I love, Sky package, for something I love more. I'll get what I want, but there's going to be a cost. And I would actually argue this, right? If it costs you nothing, you probably don't value it. You won't value it. So my kids, when iPods came out, I remember buying my son an iPod for Christmas. Now, that thing cost me a lot of money. I had to sacrifice for that to get my son that iPod. Now, I remember a month after Christmas, walking into his room, and his iPod was lying on the floor. Now, at that moment, I realised I valued it more than him. And the reason was because I paid for it.
You paid the cost.
So, if you pay nothing, you normally don't value it.
Well, you say and just to close off on this point, and I love this quote that right at the end of this chapter, you say, the cause must always be greater than the cost.
Always.
The cause must be always greater than the cost.
Yes.
Just explain that last bit before we move to chapter.
I've been married 24 years. I love my wife, Dawn. She's the most amazing woman. If I go out to buy her a present, obviously there's a sense in which I'll go with a budget. But the first thing I go with is I know what she will love. I will aim to get that. The second issue is the cost. So if I go into the room looking at the price tag first, the danger is I'll be cost driven. But if I go into the room looking at the cause first, then I will be cause driven. Right. So in other words, I will try to make the cost serve the cause. I want to please her, that's the cause. If I can possibly sacrifice to pay that cost, because the cause is to please her. When the cause is small, the cost is always high.
Right.
When the cause is great, the cost is
fantastic.
affordable.
Very, very good. I think it's brilliant. So we go on to chapter 5, which is one that's a real challenging one I found. Lifting the logic lid. And you start off, and I love it. There's days when I feel like a world beater, and there's other days when I feel like I've been beaten up by the world. That's how I feel. Then you obviously go on to say, we can never allow how we feel to drive the agenda for our lives. So it's not about how I feel about a situation that should determine the outcome. Absolutely. So explain that. Because obviously you're saying you have bad days. Logically, I don't feel like a world beater some days. I feel like... But then there's the other days that you do. But you probably have... I don't know, here's the question. Do you have more world-beating days when you was writing this, or more I've been beaten up by the world? And how did you overcome that? Because obviously the logic.
I think today I have more world-beating days than being beaten up days. And I think there are reasons for that. I think one of the primary reasons is I have intentionally tried to move beyond how I feel. So if I go on feelings, I'll brush my teeth once a month. Do you know? As a boy, I couldn't wait to learn to shave, and then I hate it. So absolutely, as you can tell. So if I went on feelings, I'd shave once a year. Do you know? So feelings are weird and wonderful things. Our feelings help make us part of who we are. It's one of the unique aspects of our creation. The danger with feelings is if we allow them, they'll drive us. They'll control us. So I don't feel like going to work. I don't feel like kissing my wife. I don't feel like taking my kids to the park. I don't feel like walking the dog. Listen, take a number, Johnny. We've all been there. That is life. But then if I let those feelings dictate to me, my marriage collapses, my kids will hate me, the dog will be messing all over the house, and nothing gets done. Some point we've got to actually move to a place where truth or values or beliefs drive feelings, and not the other way around.
Explain that.
Well, if feelings dominate, then my beliefs submit to how I feel. Whereas if my beliefs dominate, they boss how I feel. So I don't feel like kissing my wife, but I know this is absolutely the right thing to do. I know this is part of making a great marriage, and I know she will appreciate it and love it. Therefore, I will do it. I don't feel like taking the dog for a walk, but I know this is the right thing to do. So you rationalize out. In other words, you train your mind to think to a different set of standards. And literally, out of that retraining of the mind, or in the context of the chapter, refocusing your logic, you then live a different way. Your logic determines your behaviour.
Your logic now determines your behaviour.
So what is logic? Logic is the framework of your belief. It's what you believe. It's how you think. So God has a logic. Sometimes people say God's illogical. And that's completely wrong. It's not God's illogical. He's super logical. He's hyper logical. His logic is above ours. He thinks differently. So one of the keys for a Christian, for example, is trying to retrain their mind not to think like a feeling-driven human being, but to think as God wants us to think. The more I learn to shape my mind according to God wants me to think, the more my life changes. So logic is the key to our belief, to our behaviour, and to our actions, really.
Because there's one great bit you taken from the Bible about Peter stepping out of the boat. and logically it makes no sense. Like, why on earth am I going to step out in the boat in the middle of a storm? I'm not doing this.
No.
But then obviously then you had, and I put here, the rational versus the possible.
Yeah.
Because he was being told, come and walk on the water. Logically makes no sense. But there is the possibility this could happen.
Yeah.
There's always that, I put here when I read your book, there's always that battle going on, always. Totally. Does that ever go away?
No.
It never goes away.
Never goes away.
No encouragement.
The simple answer is that it never goes away.
Yeah.
It's a constant tension. I'm a great fan of a leader called Andy Stanley, and he put it brilliantly when dealing with some leadership issues, but the principle applies. He said some things can be reconciled, they can be sorted out, put to bed. Yeah. So you fix them and they go away.
That's it.
Other things are tensions to be managed, and this is one of them. So yesterday I could have walked on water.
Yeah.
Today I will face the same tension in another area.
Yeah.
So it may not be I have to get out of a boat and walk on water, but it could be I'm being challenged by God to do something that my human logic says that's bonkers.
Yeah. Why?
And God's saying, do it.
Do it anyway.
So there is a constant, and I think the Bible, this is one of the reasons I drew this principle out, I think the Bible's saturated with this tension.
Yeah.
So Abraham faces the facts, his body's as good as dead, yet he believes God.
Yeah. I'm still going to have a child.
Absolutely. Peter knows as a fisherman, this can't work, and yet he hears the word come.
Yeah.
So it's that constant tension, and again, if we settle it as an ongoing life tension, that regardless how well or how badly we're doing, it's going to move up and down a scale constantly, then it helps us actually deal with it. I think that it's an ongoing tension of life.
Excellent. And just on that point, so the people who do move past mediocrity are those that say, okay, logically it makes no sense, but I believe the possibility, I'm going to do it anyway.
Absolutely.
And the great ones are those who think like that.
That's
on
true.
an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
Excellent. So if we go to chapter 6 now, as we're running through this, title is short-term versus long-term glory.
Yeah.
And obviously you start off on page 70, he's got, sometimes in order to break through into success, we have to, once again, as you mentioned earlier with the sky situation, have to sacrifice short-term gains for the prospects of long-term glory. But then you're also right, Moses teaches that a vision determines choice. And one of the key things, I think, do people enough, maybe when you was writing this, did you think a lot of people don't really have a long-term goal? There's no real, it's very much about the here and now. Is that where you're coming from?
I think that's true. I think it's an interesting thing. We're in the middle of a recession, so in the middle of that you get lots of conversation around finances and debt and saving, and some of the stats coming out about the short-termism of people's view of finance. I heard a man say, when I was years and years ago when I was a boy in church, and I never forgot it, sort of seared into my head. He said, if you play today, you'll pay tomorrow.
You play till you pay tomorrow. Yeah.
If you pay today, you can play tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now, we have a culture in the Western world of playing today.
Yeah.
So don't worry about tomorrow. Don't think about tomorrow. In fact, if I don't think about tomorrow, it's not real.
Yeah.
So it'll go away. And I'm 21. What do I want to think about my pension at 65 for? That's like forever.
Yeah.
That's years away. And I get all that. I understand all that. But the more short term you are, the more prone you are to mediocrity.
Right.
Mediocrity and short termism go hand in hand.
Fantastic.
You cannot be a person who breaks mediocrity if you only think about the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I try to teach people this. Live in the present, but don't live for the present.
Yeah. Fantastic.
There's a difference. It sounds like semantics, but it's a completely different thing. Living in the present is me living right now to the full.
Yeah.
Saying, I'm going to give my best to this context. I'm going to do my best because I know that this moment leads to a next moment, which leads to a next moment. Living for the present says stuff the next moment.
Yeah.
It's just about the here and now.
Yeah.
Now, if you apply that to your marriage, you'll end up in adultery.
Yeah.
If you apply that to your business, you'll end up broke.
Yeah.
If you apply that to your kids, you'll end up lonely.
Yeah.
If you apply that to your spirituality, you'll end up disappointed. So you can't just think of the moment.
Yeah.
Every moment leads to another moment, which leads to another moment, which leads to another moment.
Yeah.
And the more you think of the connecting moments, Stephen Covey Sr., who's recently died, wrote a phenomenal book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Great chapter in there called Begin with the End in Mind.
Yeah.
It's just genius.
No,
it's a world bestseller.
Yeah.
And that chapter, that phrase has become a mantra of my life.
Yeah.
Begin with the end in mind. Don't just think about today. Ask the question, if I carry on the way I'm going, what would it look like in 10 years?
That's a very good
So if I eat the way I'm eating, what am I going to look like in 5 years' time?
Yeah.
If I keep spending my money the way I'm spending it, what does that look like in 5 years' time? If I keep treating my wife the way I'm treating her now, what's that going to look like?
Love that.
Now, outside of stuff coming at us which we've no control over, let's say everything remains lovely.
Yeah.
Then the decisions I'm making today are part of my destiny tomorrow.
So the practical, anybody who's watching this video and saying, okay, what can I take? Let me write down who it is that I want to be, what it is that I want to achieve.
Absolutely.
Not just tomorrow or what I want to, but have that big long-term goal.
Absolutely.
Who do I really want to be in the end?
Yeah.
And then obviously with the end in mind, your little steps all the way up to, and that will then determine what you do in the short term. So the long term actually affects, obviously, as you're saying,
it does.
The short term
And
of the short term.
I think it's absolutely correct. I think, and without sort of, we're not talking about knowing every detail of the next 10 years of your life, but we're saying the further, the more long term your goal, the more that can actually help you deal with the details of today.
Yeah.
You make decisions today based on where you want to go, not just on right now.
Yeah.
So I'm about to spend 100 quid on something stupid.
Yeah.
Okay. If I've no vision for the future, I'll waste that 100 quid.
Yeah.
The minute I get a vision for the future, my £100 takes on purpose.
Yeah.
And then it's not wasted. I can take a section of that £100, enjoy it today, but I can take a section of that £100 and invest it towards the future.
Yeah.
And the more you learn to do that with your life, then the more meaning you bring into the ordinary.
Fantastic.
The mediocre stuff that nobody enjoys.
Yeah.
But all that stuff takes on energy.
Yeah.
Because it's going somewhere.
Now here's a final question on this chapter. Do you have your goals always set before you? You hear so many things, people have got a vision board, people have got goals set out written on a board. What do you do?
Well, I do. I have long-term goals for my life.
Yeah.
Some of those would be quite generic.
Yeah.
So, for example, we would have a goal of being debt-free.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a very definite goal. So we're living our lives. Now, we achieved debt-free living last summer.
Yeah.
And then the Lord called us to here, and we had to move to Solihull, where house prices are a lot more expensive than they were up north.
Yeah.
And suddenly we're no longer debt-free.
Yeah.
But we're immediately re-engaged with that plan. So
Fantastic.
the Bible says that the person who borrows is the slave of the person who lends.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't want to be a slave.
Yeah.
I want to be free.
Yeah.
So that I can be a lender to others. Now that's
Fantastic.
a life goal. Now in order to achieve, that may take 10 years.
Yeah.
May take 15 years.
Yeah.
But if I achieve that goal, I'm going to save more money than I thought possible.
Yeah.
And then when I get debt free, or as I get debt free, I can actually be incredibly generous to the world around me.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So we lead into chapter 7, and the title of chapter 7 is History Does Not Determine Your Destiny. And obviously we lead with the quote. It says, the past can have a profound impact on our present and the future if, and I love this, if we grant it permission to do so. Yeah. So let's elaborate on that. Yeah. So where did you come with this?
Well, this is one of the big passions of my life.
Yeah.
So when I ever preach on this, I get very emotional.
Yeah.
Because when I was 10 years old, I was in primary school.
Yeah.
I was a decent student, but I was struggling with my work at that time.
Yeah.
And the teacher, maybe out of frustration, instead of trying to help me, made life worse. And I remember him dragging me up to the front of the class in a sort of a searing moment that I've never forgotten.
Yeah.
And he said, essentially, you're a stupid boy. You'll never amount to anything. You're a waste of space. And lambasted me for essentially a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
That indelibly sort of marked me.
Yeah.
And I remember going to secondary school, and because of that, I sort of ended up in a lower stream in the secondary school. So there was a grammar stream and a lower stream.
Yeah.
And I ended up in the lower stream. And yet it was an impact with the headmaster of that school that transformed my life.
Yeah.
And through his encouragement, I went from the lower stream to the top stream in 1 year.
Fantastic.
And here's what he said to me. He said, you have amazing potential.
Yeah.
You have great intelligence and great skill. When I got my PhD, all those years later, I wrote to him.
Yeah.
He had retired. And he wrote me back a 4-page letter thanking me for thanking him for spotting that. Now, here was the thing I say to people. If I'd have allowed the words of a teacher, you're a stupid boy, you'll never amount to anything, to form the limit of my life, then I would have been a stupid boy.
Yeah.
I would have been a stupid man, and I wouldn't have achieved half the things that I've now achieved in life. What broke that was the belief that my past, what someone said about me, wasn't the parameters of my future. So somebody else saw something in me which lifted the possibility beyond that parameter. I meet a lot of people who are giving yesterday permission to dictate to tomorrow.
And the future,
So and they do that by living as a slave to yesterday.
Yeah.
So today becomes hijacked by the pain, the disappointment, the sorrow, sometimes horrific events of yesterday.
Yeah.
But they allow that to become the prison house of today. And once we let that happen, tomorrow is finished. We have no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow will never be beyond today. It's going to be the same type of day tomorrow as it is today.
Because one of the things I love that you say as well in this chapter is refuse to play the blame culture.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So what you were saying is that you could have easily blamed your future on this teacher.
Yeah.
But what you were saying is that I refuse.
I refuse to do it.
I'm taking control of my life. So what you're saying to people is that, look, whatever's happened in your past, you take control. Yeah. Because I suppose, are you saying if you don't take control, you're letting history dictate your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And not only that, the double whammy is you end up getting hurt twice. So someone hurts you, say for example this teacher, and I end up then missing the best of my life because of him. Yeah. Then I'm doubly worse off. I'm now, not only is it his fault, but I've missed a great life. Yeah. And he carries on with his life. Yeah. He's probably having a great life. He's probably forgotten all about me. And here I am living up an impoverished life and blaming him for it, and he probably doesn't even know. So release yourself from blame and take responsibility. There's a great example of this in the Bible, Jabez, whose his name literally means pain. It says his mother gave him that name because of the pain she caused him. Now he could have turned around and said, oh well, my mum didn't love me, my mum hated me, look at the name she gave me, and he could have lived a mediocre life. But it says he called out to God and he said, God, enlarge me, expand my territory. And the Bible says that God not only honoured his request, but God said he was more honourable. He stood up and out from among his brothers. So this horrific beginning, which predicts nothing but mediocrity. And what do we end up with? A man who stands head and shoulders above his brothers. A man who actually expands his territory instead of living in a narrow place.
And I think this leads perfectly into chapter 8 actually. Because chapter 8 is about the art of self-encouragement. And one of the great things you say here is, how can I fly like an eagle when I'm surrounded by turkey? and I love that. And the thing is, whether that be your past, or your present, you're looking around, you could easily have the blame culture. I wasn't born into a rich family, or they told me I was dumb. But what you're saying on chapter 8 is the art of self-encouragement. But the question is, when you're in those situations, how do you encourage yourself? It sounds great. But how do you do that?
Absolutely.
How do you soar like an eagle amongst turkeys?
The phrase, by the way, was inspired by a fridge magnet on my mother-in-law's fridge. That's her sense of humour. I think it's a profound question because the art of self-encouragement, again, is a biblical one. So it's not just an issue of positive psychology. In the Bible, it's an issue of biblical truth. And the story where we get that sort of phrase from is King David, or he wasn't king then. He's a fugitive. Something had badly gone wrong, and it says his mighty men turned against him, and they threatened to kill him. And it says David encouraged himself in the Lord. Now the root word literally means to reconnect to something.
Yeah.
So what the question is, what does David reconnect to?
Yeah.
In David's life, he reconnects to three things: the presence of God,
Yeah.
the promise of God, and the purpose of God.
Yeah.
Now, if you're listening to this and you're not a Christian or a follower of Jesus, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But to take the principle step back, it means this: in order to self-encourage, you've got to connect to something bigger than the moment.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So if I'm not a Christian, how can I connect to God?
Yeah.
I understand that. But if you're not a Christian, you've got to connect to something bigger than the moment you're in.
Right.
So that then you look at the big picture, or you look at the possibility, or you look at the opportunity beyond the circumstance you're in, and you connect to that truth, you connect to that life.
Yeah.
David connects to the presence of God.
Yeah.
He reminds himself of what God says, and then he does the thing that God told him to do. So he literally, in the midst of his challenge, reconnects to something. And the idea of self-encouragement is to connect again to truth. He connects himself literally to God.
Excellent.
So if I can learn to connect to a truth.
Yeah.
So my school teacher says, "You're an idiot."
Yeah.
Well, is that the truth or not?
Yeah.
So if I believe that's the truth, then I am an idiot.
Yeah.
I end up becoming trapped
Yeah.
by those words.
Yeah.
If, however, I connect to a truth that my headmaster said, actually, you're brilliant.
Yeah.
You've got ability. You've got potential. I see something in you. Okay, now I've got two truths.
Yeah.
I've got an idiot truth, and I can be anything I want to be truth. Here's the choice. Who am I going to believe?
Right.
That's the moment of self-encouragement. That's the moment where I break free from the prison house of history, and I embrace the opportunity of destiny. If I listen to the idiot comment, then I am trapped in the prison house of history.
Yeah.
If I listen to "you've got great potential" comment, I am liberated to the opportunity of destiny.
So no matter what comes, you can just hold on to that truth, and I encourage myself that everything else may be going
absolutely
belly up around me, but I know the truth that I have a destiny and a purpose.
One of my great heroes, and I suppose for millions of people, Nelson Mandela. I've read his book Long Walk to Freedom, and in there he talked about growing a garden, literally cultivating a garden on Robben's Island prison, and his garden was his way of finding freedom in the prison. And when he grew the garden, it reminded him he was a human being. He was a man of value. He was a man of destiny. He was a man of purpose. He was a man of innovation and creativity. He wasn't an animal. He wasn't a number. He wasn't just a prisoner. He was a man of destiny. And I love that. And he's able to walk away from Robben Island after 27 years and lead a country. Not to a bloodbath, which many predicted, but to peace. Now that's probably the greatest example in the 21st century of a man not being trapped by his history and embracing his destiny. Nelson Mandela. Outstanding.
Fantastic. All right, so we're moving on to chapter 9, and obviously the title of this is Rising Above Mediocre Expectations. And you start off saying, whether we think we can or we think we can't, we will always be right.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Well, I think it was a little thing I remember hearing as a child. Sometimes when I'm writing, weird stuff comes
just come that,
and I remember seeing, the example of the little choo-choo train sort of going up the hill slowly, getting to the top of the hill and going over. And it was this, I remember the rhyme, I know I can, I know I can, I know
oh,
I
okay.
can. And it gets to the top and then, I can. So it's the idea that if I live life thinking I can't, then I'll be 100% successful.
Right, I can't.
If you're convinced I can't do that, and you never try, well, you're right. But if I say, well, I can, or at the very least, I'll have a go. Then we open ourselves up to the possibility we could do something that we never thought we could have done. We give ourselves the chance to rise above not only our personal expectations, but even the expectations that other people put on us.
Excellent. Because there was two bits that within this chapter I loved, statements you said. One of the things that we need to do is continually break the mould of limitation, but also raise the bar of expectation, and they were perfectly joined. So obviously, if someone's watching this now, how do you continue to break the mould of those limitations? Because a lot of us live lives not what we dreamed, but someone else dreamt for us.
Yeah.
Type of stuff. So how do I break that mould again?
Yeah.
What advice would you give of breaking that mould and continue to break that mould? Because I think, as you're saying, one of the themes is that it never stops. You may get to this level, but you could go so much further. You've got to break that limitation. Yeah. How do you keep on doing that?
It's a great challenge. I think one of the things we all face is the fact that people around us will have an expectation of us. That's the level you can go to. Yeah. Or they have an expectation of us that we're going to become something. Yeah. So I have 3 children, all 3 of them from the same gene pool, all completely different. Yeah. If I tried to make my son fit the mould of my oldest daughter, I would kill him. I would destroy him. Yeah. So as a parent, we've had to learn, how do we draw out the uniqueness of this individual to allow them to explore the boundaries of their potential? Oh, okay. So one of the first things to breaking the mold is actually understanding who we are, not who or what people think we are. Yeah. I remember meeting a young girl, brilliant person. Her parents desperately wanted her to be a doctor. Desperately. I mean, you're going to be a doctor. We have had you to be a doctor. Yeah. And I said, what do you want to be? She said, a teacher. So she was facing probably one of the most difficult mold breaking moments. Parents who had invested phenomenal amount of money in her, and yet they were essentially not getting who she was. So one of the keys to breaking the mold or breaking the expectations around us is understanding truly who we are. Recognizing the gifts we have, because those gifts have maybe a natural limit as well, but a natural opportunity, and finding ways to express those things uniquely, so that we don't end up living out the limitation of somebody else's life. So example, when the early settlers, white settlers, Western settlers went to Australia, they had a continent in front of them that was 1 trillion times bigger than the UK, but they ended up building, back to back, 2 up, 2 down terrace houses. What's that all about? Well, all they're doing is reflecting their mould. Their mould is small. They've come from the UK where everybody lives on top of each other. They've gone to a continent where they could all have like a dozen acres each and still be plenty of room. What do? They build 2 up, 2 down, back to back, side by side, because that's what they know. In order to build bigger, you've got to break out of the mould that you know. So if your mould has been a small one, if you've come from a working class background, where people say, don't get ahead of yourself. You're one of us. Who do you think you are, trying to be a millionaire? Then the chances are you'll never break out of that unless you reprogram your thinking or get around the sorts of people who can help you move beyond the turkey syndrome into the eagle syndrome.
Because obviously that's one of the things I was just about to say is, so when you say raise the bar of expectation, how do you do that? Which will help obviously to break the mold. And one of the things you're saying is just get around the right people. Get around the right people who are doing things that you want to do. But also, I think this is quite profound. What you're saying is sometimes you just have to stop and reflect. Am I doing or am I living what I really want to do?
True.
And I suppose there's so many people out there. Do you feel, obviously you'll meet a lot of people as you'll pass to them and things like that. I mean, do you meet a lot of people who are living lives that are not theirs, or they're living visions that are not theirs? Because I think one of the examples is if you go to a church, everybody wants to be a pastor. But why do you want to be a pastor? Is that really your gift? Absolutely. But everybody's taken on that ball because you walked in church and it's that mentality. Do you find that happens?
Oh yeah, I think that's massive. I think it's huge. I think if you looked at the surveys done on job satisfaction, that's off the scale. So a little question to ask your audience would be, if you inherited £10 million right now, or you won the lottery and you became a £10 million winner, would you give up your job? Okay?
Yeah.
If you would, then you probably shouldn't be doing what you're doing right now.
That's profound, isn't it?
So
that's the question.
If my great uncle left me 10 million quid,
yeah,
I would be at work here tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because I'm not here for money.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, I like money, I earn money, and money makes my life better.
Yeah.
But I'm not primarily doing it for money. Money is not my purpose.
Love that.
Purpose is my purpose.
Fantastic.
So if I inherited 10 million quid, I would still be pulling a 40 plus hour week. Because I would do it. And I'd be able to say to the church, you don't need to pay me anymore. I can look after myself. But I'd still do it. This would still be my office. This would still be my world. This would still be my work. And I say to people, if you wouldn't do it with 10 million in the bank, why are you doing it now?
Yeah.
And of course, for most people, it's down to I've got to pay my mortgage.
Yeah.
I've got car repayments to make.
Yeah.
And what we end up doing is becoming a slave to something less than purpose.
Yeah.
And most people it seems never get the chance to really pursue purpose. A great question to ask people: if money was no obstacle, what would you do?
What would you do?
What would you do? What's inside you that you just love to do?
Yeah.
And that's probably close to the epicenter of maybe what you should be doing in terms of the purpose of your life.
I love that. Love that. Right, as we get now to chapter 10, that's a brilliant way to close chapter 9. As we get to chapter 10, this is, as I was saying, one of the biggest ones I feel, talking to young people, is one of their issues. And even older people, actually, I even say that, probably even worse for them. But chapter 10 title is Failure Isn't Falling Down, It's Staying Down. And one of the things that you put on page 114, it says, I suggest to you this, the tragedy is not so much the failure in itself, but the failure to get over the failure. Let's elaborate on that. So the tragedy is not the failure, you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not getting over it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's a life principle. It's a bit like earlier on we talked about just suck up to the realization pain is on the way.
Yeah.
This is another one. Anyone who wants to achieve anything of any value must expect some level of failure. Yeah. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So the example right back at the beginning of the book, before they broke the speed of sound, they failed numerous times in the attempt. Yeah. But then they succeeded. Yeah. You know, probably the well-worn, probably overused analogy of Edison and the light bulb. Yeah. You know, hundreds of attempts. And then when he invented it, he said, I simply learned all the ways that it didn't work. Yeah. Well, that's a brilliant idea. John Maxwell, a great leadership writer, he talks about failing forward. Yeah. Failing forward. Brilliant. Yeah. I wish I had said that. This is brilliant, isn't it? It's just not fair that he said that. Failing forward, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. If you think about it, great parenting does that. It allows kids to fail forward. Yeah. In other words, it expects failure. Yeah. It prepares for failure, and then it addresses failure. Fantastic. So what we tend to feel is that failure is terminal. No. Failure's not terminal. The failure to deal with failure is the terminal issue. Right, okay, yeah, right? That's it. So every person listening to this has failed. Yeah. I have failed. Mate, I could keep you here all day on just the failures in the last year of my life. But it's then, okay, what do I learn from that failure? Yeah. Why did I fail? Yeah. Can I change the wiring system to make sure I don't do that again? Yeah. And what do I learn from that moment? How can I make that better? How can I improve? How can I go on? How can I get better? So I'm a great Apple fan. Yeah. You look at the evolution of Apple. Yeah. Every new product gets sexier. Yeah. And more slick. And more brilliant. What are they doing? Learning from the past. Learning. Yeah. And part of our learning will involve the learning that happens around failure. Yeah. The Apprentice that's on TV. Yeah. The people that ultimately win. Yeah. There's a slice of luck involved in some of that. Yeah. But the people that ultimately win are the people who learn quickly what's needed, what's wanted, what Alan Sugar's looking for. Straight away, yeah. And they learn, they adapt quickly. Yeah. The quick adapters, the quick learners, are the ones with the highest chance of winning. The slower you learn on failure, the tougher life becomes. So we all fail. Get over it.
Yeah.
Just get used to it.
Just one of those things.
It is
one
life.
of those
It's
things.
part of life.
Yeah.
But as Maxwell says, you can learn to fail forward, or you can allow failure to become a terminal issue in your life.
Yeah.
And if we do that, then most of us will never, ever, ever get to the things we believe in.
Now, one of the things that you say as advice dealing with failure is don't fight it alone. Now, explain that. So you say when dealing with failure, don't fight failure.
Yeah.
On your own. I was like, okay.
Well, one of my great maxims in life, I've written this in the covers of many of my books, is that the people around me make me look better than I am.
Yeah.
So, as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, one of my default belief systems is that God made us to be in community.
Yeah.
It's not good for man to be alone.
Yeah.
And so he puts man into human community.
Yeah.
I don't think that's just a sexual issue. I think that's a human community issue.
Yeah.
I think we're actually designed to work better with the people around us.
Yeah.
And I've learned that in failure, my big temptation is to go into the cave, roll the stone over, and have a pity party for an hour or two. And with my Celtic mindset, I am a bit prone to being a bit overly serious and morose.
Yeah.
So when failure hits me, I can get a bit down on myself.
Yeah.
I have been a very strong self-critic.
Yeah.
The danger with that is if the only voice speaking to me is mine.
Yeah. Oh, you're staying.
Then so I've got to allow sensible people to speak into me. I've got to allow the voice of God to speak to me. But I've also got to allow the voice of a phenomenal wife in my life, great people, great work colleagues, great family who say, John, come on,
it's not
you can do it. It's not over.
Yeah.
All right, come on, let's dust ourselves down. Ecclesiastes says this, 2 is better than 1. And it goes on to say, pity the man who falls and has no one to pick him up. It's gorgeous expression.
Yeah.
And you know, I then made a determination. One of my life goals is not to live alone.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not talking about being married or being single. I mean, don't live alone.
Yeah.
Alone is dangerous.
Yeah.
Alone makes you vulnerable. Alone makes you prone to believe your own PR.
Yeah.
And also your own stupidity. So don't process failure alone. Allow people who know how to fail forward.
And this is one great way, as you talked about before, how to learn from your failure. Is by having good people around and say, well, look, take this from it. It's not that bad. Get up, and this is how we move forward.
Absolutely. And people who've learned to fail forward, who are around you, don't patronise you. They don't say, oh, well, come on, get over it. Yeah. They say, I know this sucks. I know this really hurts. I get it. I've been there.
Yeah.
But it's not the end.
Yeah.
Unless you want it to be the end.
Doesn't have to be terminal.
Yeah, we give failure permission to win or not. It's our choice. It's not. Failure has no power except that which we give it.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. But obviously we've covered the 10 steps, of moving beyond mediocrity.
Yeah.
If you was to encapsulate everything together, which is going to be difficult, but what would be your final thing that you'd like to say to anyone watching this video who's looking to move beyond mediocrity and saying, do you know what, I'm now going to fulfill my purpose? What would you like to say to them?
I'd say that I personally believe that every single human being is created with an express purpose. Yeah. Is created with gifts, abilities, and potential. Yeah. I believe regardless of our physical or our environmental restriction, every person can make a contribution. I think the world around you wants to squeeze that out of you. Yeah. I think sometimes even our own belief system wants to squeeze that out of us. And I would appeal to every person to connect to something greater than themselves. Yeah. As a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, I believe that one of the keys is connecting to God and His message, because that always lifts me, always moves me beyond the limitation of who I am. But connect to something bigger than yourself. Your life's bigger than your mortgage. Yeah. It's bigger than your car. Yeah. It's bigger than the next holiday. It's bigger than the next fix. Yeah. It's bigger than all of that. Yeah. And if we can connect to something big in our lives, whatever the big is, the bigness of that purpose will draw greatness out of us. A young man once said this to me when I was mentoring him. He said, "Pastor, demand greatness of me." Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. He said, "Don't go easy on me. Yeah. Demand that I be better than myself.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. And I think sort of that's what God wants to do for us. He does want to call greatness out of us.
Yeah.
So that we become perhaps more than we ever dreamed we could be.
Absolutely fantastic. All I can say is thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And I'm sure obviously we'll be looking forward to the next reading of the next book.
Total pleasure.
Brilliant.
You.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Cheers. I know anybody who's watched this and applied it, I guarantee you this, will begin to move above mediocrity. I promise you that, but you've got to take it on board and you've got to do it. The one thing I would do personally, which is what I did, is go out and buy the book. Believe me, look, I don't get any royalties from this or anything like that, but if you want to move beyond mediocrity, you've got to change your mindset. You've got to start doing things differently. This is a great way of formulating that plan to get to the place where you really want to be. So we hope that you're blessed, and as we always say with Generation Hope, God's gift to us is life. What we do with that life is our gift back to God. So go out there and be blessed, and we'll see you soon.